Hello, everyone. My name is Bert Helm. I am an editor at large at Inc. magazine. I'm excited to welcome you to day 3 of ATC. And as part of our academic and startup track, I am joined by Jim Scapa, the founder of Altair, still its CEO. And we are about to have a great conversation, I think, about what it takes to run a company from its earliest days when it's just you and a few friends who think you have a good idea, all the way until you are a publicly traded company with thousands of employees. And how do you sustain your company's culture? How do you figure out how to evolve as a leader as everything around you, not just your company, but the whole state of technology is changing so fast? Jim, thanks so much for speaking with me today.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
I guess I'm interested in the initial plunge that any entrepreneur takes when you start a new company. And this idea of, I think you started as a consultant in this new technology of modeling and physics engines and figuring out how to test with computers on a smaller scale or with smaller scale computers than had been used in the past. Was this, at that point in time, what was kind of the general, was this considered something crazy? Was it a big, how big a risk was it when you decided you were going to start your own company?
Okay, so let me put you into the moment of when the company started. I grew up in New York and had come out to the Detroit area to work at Ford, and spent a couple years there, 3 years there, and then had worked while doing my MBA in the evening, and had gotten involved in this new area of structural analysis using computer simulation. And at that time, there were a lot of companies bubbling up in the Detroit market. I was young in my early 20s, but I was always very entrepreneurial, and so decided to throw my hat into this ring as well. And with a couple other friends, we began Altair, and we began as a consulting company, like many of the others that were happening at that time. It was difficult, to be honest, because we bootstrapped $1,500, and we thought that we were all working at General Motors at that time. We were 3 of the top people, and we thought we would get contract from GM, and GM came back to us and said, "Nope, we're not going to give you a contract," because they didn't want to promote this kind of very active environment where new companies were forming. I had a new baby, my first child, and so it was a risky time. So family worried that this was risky, but my wife was very supportive, similar for my partners, and we had confidence in ourselves, and it was a tough few months until we started getting some business, and
it's got to be scary thinking that that your first big customer isn't going with you. There aren't that many other automakers in town. How did you get your feet off the ground, or how did you get everything off the ground as you were starting?
We had confidence, the confidence of youth or something, I don't know. But, we were experts in this new area. I had a lot of contacts, even though I was just in my mid-20s. I had a lot of relationships that I had formed with some of the different software companies in the space. Many of the hardware companies in those days, you were doing a lot of time sharing on Cray computers, and I owned a lot of those relationships actually for GM at the time. And so we just had confidence that we were going to be able to figure it out, and that ultimately, when people saw our resolve, if you will, they would be willing to send us work. And in fact, that was the case.
How did
So,
you transition from being a consultancy and being a confident and growing consultancy to saying, no, we'll be a full-fledged software company?
so I was always interested in computers and software and all of that, and obviously our field was a fairly high-tech field. We wanted to develop some software right from the very beginning, and so we had a couple of failures actually, and then ultimately we had some success with a first product called HyperMesh, and that happened basically. We started developing HyperMesh in 88 or so. We released it late 89. And HyperMesh was really the first of many, what I'm going to say are real innovations from Altair, actually, because we leveraged these, large memory machines, PC, Intel-based machines, and we brought all of the model into core, which was not the way things were done in the past. We were competing with products in the market that cached the models back and forth, parts of the models. And so we ended up with a 30x performance gain and a real hit of a product. But even then, it was really hard. There's so much.
I would imagine people might not believe you when you come into the room and say, I'm a tiny company who's never done software before, and I can do 30 times what your existing product can do.
Yeah, it was a thrilling time, actually, because we would go and do demos, and we would bring the other product on the screen and just import a model, like a big engine block model. And in the 1 hour time of our demo, it took to import that model while we were spinning the model and animating and putting stress contours and doing a lot of things for that hour, and sort of taking a bow at the end. Wasn't that amazing? And you really had different reactions. I traveled the world in those days, early days, because we were bringing the product around the world. And, in Italy, they were doing backflips and, they were amazed. In Germany, they gave us a very, no emotion. But even in places that were excited about what they saw, they'd say, well, maybe we'll buy one copy and try it out. And so you realize that just having a great product, I've gone through this many times because I brought a lot of really innovative technology to market. It's not just that product. I know it's cliche to say that, but it was a lot of persistence and patience, and ultimately success, obviously.
The products have certainly changed a lot since then. What has stayed the same about how you launch something like that and how you walk into a room and get firm commitments from people, whether they're doing backflips or looking at you sternly like those Germans?
So what has changed? Not as much as you might think. One of the things we did is one of our innovations was on the business model side. Our second innovative technology came in the early 90s, where we commercialized a technology from the University of Michigan that created these beautiful forms for structures. You could fill a package space and then tell it what the loads and constraints were, and it would give you these basically very optimized layouts of material that were organic. They look like bone structures. They're beautiful. And so when we came to market with that, we realized this is going to be hard again. And so I invented, if you will, this business model of units. So instead of licensing one software application to the customer, I tell them, you now have units. And when you run the first product, it draws units from your pool. But now you can use those same units to run the second product that I've just introduced. And so it's available to you on day one. Go out and run it. And I have a lot of patents around that. And to be honest, when I invented that, I patented music and books and movies, and all kinds of consumer digital content as well. So that model really helped us to bring in a new product. And today, I've been enormously acquisitive. I've done 34
Right.
acquisitions. And as I bring each one in, they're almost instantaneously available to all of my 11,000 customers because I put my licensing on them. It's a little risky and it's a hard model to follow, actually. A couple other companies have tried to follow us, but it's very powerful because it's very high value for the client.
So
And yeah.
when you acquire a new company, it's one
Mhm.
thing to bring the product in and make it instantly available to all your clients. It's another thing to bring the people in. And I
Mhm.
want to know, especially, I mean, when you start out as a small company and you're growing and growing, how do you preserve what you defined as your culture, what may have just occurred organically in the beginning? And then as you're bringing in these other organizations, each with their own cultures, how do you make sure that that makes that transitions as well as the technology does?
Yeah. So most of the acquisitions I've done, and they're all over the world, by the way, this is one of my favorite aspects of what we've done. I've done two companies in Korea and one in South Africa and a couple in Italy and in France. They're just everywhere. Silicon Valley and Texas, whatever. Um, Most of these companies are relatively small. The founder is usually a technologist, either came out of a university or invented something really new. I'm usually looking for exciting technology that we're thinking a lot about the future. And so, for the most part, those organizations are pretty technical, and they generally can fit. We can get them integrated pretty well in our culture because our culture is it's sort of a mix of a commercial, corporate, very entrepreneurial culture, but it's also a little bit of a university where we have lots of communication. By the way, that there's a lot of cross pollination between all these brilliant technologists that I've collected together in my commercial university.
Mhm.
So everybody has a commercial orientation, but they're still freely exploring new technology, and they feel empowered actually when they come inside of Altair very often.
Is there what I mean? How do you do that? Does that occur naturally, or are there ways that you, as a leader, need to guide uh, the culture, or at least prevent entropy as you just insert more and more random variables of new people?
I spend a lot of time on the people side. I mean, I think one of my strengths is I read people well. I understand what motivates people, and I'm always thinking about how their motivations sort of interplay with the ambitions of the company, if you will. Um, and my team has grown up with this culture, so they understand it. We wrap our arms around the new people and give them big hugs. We are very much a meritocracy. It's really powerful.
We were chatting a little bit yesterday about how in the early days there would be a tendency to get comfortable with whatever it was you were doing at the time, whether it was consulting or whether it was the first piece of software you were selling. And
Yeah.
that at every step, you would have people who say, come on, let's focus on what we do well. Um, this doesn't make sense. And you said sometimes there are people who adapt and share the vision, and then there are others where you say, okay, you were right for either this stage of the company, or your inertia is now moving along the wrong vector, and we need to, like, I guess my question is, as a manager and as a leader, how do you figure out, or what have you found are some shared traits of people who stay with you? Because it's not as if I mean, the funny thing about Altair is it's not as if you're hacking and slashing and bringing on new people at every turn. People stay there a long time, so you must have found some kind of DNA that it keeps people
I, one thing,
engaged and on
yeah,
board.
I think one thing I've done is especially early, I heard a lot of people fresh out of school. I really believe in young people, by the way, and actually through the years we got a little away from that, and I felt it was a darker period because as the middle management, as we were growing, needed to hire someone. They always wanted to hire someone with experience. That was the whole, oh, I got to have a guy with experience, right? We got away from hiring fresh grads. And when you hire people with experience, they come with their own bias and cultures, and that you have to sort of unlearn. And those are challenging. Young people coming out of school are just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and usually they come up to speed way faster than older people think. And it's exciting, and they bring new ideas. So I think that was part of what we've done, and then the culture has sort of grown, through the years and evolved a bit.
As the
Um,
company grows and as it gets bigger and as products change and the direction of the company changes, how do you adapt? What have your job is very different. You still have the same title, but your job itself is very different than it used to be. What are things that you've had to change or unlearn? How have you evolved as a leader?
yeah, I've evolved a lot. There's no doubt about it. And really, at every stage, I had people tell me, especially this last one, to take the business public. Don't do it, Jim. You're going to hate it. You're not going to be good at this. And I saw that as a challenge. So I'm a fairly driven person, as you can imagine. I'm not Michael Jordan driven, where I will do things at all costs, but I'm pretty driven and I'm very competitive, and so I drive myself to make change that I feel I need to make. I do the tough things that I think are necessary to do, but I love change. I mean, I just absolutely love experimenting and changing. I reorganize. I told you this yesterday. I reorganize the company very frequently. I start, around late August, September, thinking about the people, and I think it's part of the dynamism of the company, and people are frightened by it. Oh my God, what's Jim going to do? you know, but and often, the moves don't seem like people, they come out of left field a little bit very often, but it's also part of how this organism is changing. And sometimes it's the wrong stuff, right? I don't mind changing back, and continuing to experiment with that. So for myself, early days, tiny company,
Hmm.
you're wearing every hat. I wrote the first payroll programs. You do everything. I carried computers in. People have memories, who had worked at a big company, and they come to Altair, and we need another couple of computers. I would go buy them and carry them in from my car, and that made an impression on people. Not to me, because I'm just doing whatever is necessary. And then as the company continued to grow, you continue to add some structure, I think, to the company, and I continue to bring in, I think, just the right people, that I could learn from also. And I'm doing that again,
What
right.
what what aspect of that was most difficult for you as you were as the company was growing and you're no longer so in touch with the business that you're writing, the payroll software? I
Uh,
imagine you don't miss writing the payroll software.
no, and I'm also, I'm one of these people that is not. I'm a bit of chaos. I'm pretty creative. I'm obviously this mix of analytical, but I'm actually sort of arty farty in a way, and so I'm this mix, and I'm chaotic, and I like trying stuff out. Um, what was your question again? I lost it.
Curious which parts of it, which parts of that personal growth were difficult for you. And I mean, one of the things I think a lot of founders early on, and a lot of our readers, they picture this business I've started, I'm going to make it huge, it's going to grow so big, and I'm going to remain the CEO, and I'm going to take it public. What do you say to them about, hold on, here are the things you need to know, or here's the difference between a founder who is great at the first stages of a company and a founder who is great throughout a company's growth and lifetime?
I think you have to be passionate about, about what you do. And I'm actually passionate about, you know, running a business and the strategy around it and being entrepreneurial. And even though my business is not that small, not that big or small, actually, in my view, I think we continue to operate with a sort of level of entrepreneurialism that can make it feel relatively small. And yes, I'm not into the details of writing payroll programs, but I am, we are a technology and product driven company. And I love that aspect of what we do, and I'm really into the products and the technology. But I also, because of the years of building it, I know finance. I know most aspects at a certain level, and I'm not, and I'm somebody that trusts other people to do their job, actually. So
You have so many different there's so many different things you can do as far as when you're thinking about strategy and thinking about new markets to enter. There's so many different options. And when you're saying, it's early days and other people say, hey, that sounds crazy, or that doesn't seem like the best use of our time, how do you make those decisions? How do you decide, no, this is something that actually is not simply worthy of a little bit of investment, but worthy of adjusting our whole company strategy?
I listen. So I'm listening to the whole world, and I'm listening to the folks inside too. But I have a certain confidence that I know where to go. I don't know
Like
how
for
to.
data analytics, for instance, is something that's fairly new for Altair. Uh, what was it about that business that felt like it wasn't just a good business to be in for anybody, but good for your organization and something where you could succeed? I mean, it's a highly competitive area with companies big and small.
When we think of, I think I talked to you yesterday, we have these four main values, and one of them is to envision the future and, make decisions in the context of that future, and also invest in that future. And most of, when you're trying to look out 10 or 15 years, where's the market going? It's more obvious than people realize. They just don't take the time to think about it, in my opinion. So, what we're doing in the field of simulation, for example, moving towards more and more leveraging of machine learning technology and data science. So sort of the data driven, thing with traditional simulation driven thing. It's pretty obvious, I think, that the market's going there. And of course, it's becoming more and more obvious. Every customer I was talking to when I had senior level meetings was starting to ask about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's no different when we moved into the high performance computing space. Our world had all been this very specialized hardware world with Crays and similar machines, but you could see this evolution towards commodity clusters, and it didn't take really a rocket scientist to see that was coming. But if you see that that's coming, what does that mean?
Sure. Have you learned any tricks on how to recognize people who share those cultural values, who share that ability to be willing to change? Because in a job interview, I'll tell you, like, yeah, I'm totally adaptable. I'll tell you whatever you want to hear, right? Or at least someone might.
Well, I don't interview everybody.
Well, that's probably you don't write the
I'm
software.
a very good reader of people,
Yeah.
actually. and
Hmm.
it's one of my strengths. It's a strength for me negotiating too, to be honest. Negotiating to me is understanding the other guy, not to cheat him, but actually to try and get him, get him what he wants while I get what I want, right? And so you really have to understand the other guy, and it's the same with the people that work for you. When you're hiring people, though, you're looking for people. We used to say we're looking for shiny eyes. We're looking for people who
I like that.
passion and want to make an impact on the world. That's why I love hiring young people, because it hasn't been stamped out of them at all. Yeah, right. By the reality of life.
Hmm.
My sister used to call me a cockeyed optimist. I'm always excited about the future. I'm still excited. I'm 63. I IPO'd at the age of 60, and I'm still excited, about the future. I love it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like if you can find those shiny eyes and then you can infer what is sparking that glimmer in them and understand their motivations, that's something that's going to serve you as a leader, as a manager, as a
Mhm.
negotiator with new customers, and ultimately with your investors too. I'd imagine. I mean, that's the keys of the kingdom in a way, to really see what it is they want to build and what it is that excites other people, and how you can make that make that increase and build that further, sort of enhance that.
Yeah, as a company, you know, we started as a consulting company, as you understood, but as we got into software, the software really took off. So consulting was super successful for me when that was my focus. We were very profitable. There was a lot of innovation on that side actually from me, and then as we got into software, the software started to really take off. And the people who were more involved on the consulting side were like, shucks, we're not the shiny penny anymore. And so we began doing some stretch projects. We designed this, hybrid hydraulic city bus, and we started doing, some innovations on that side as well. I think you have to keep people excited about what they're doing, and those things we learned a lot from, in every case. So we've done I have a lot of patents. We have 150 patents in solid state lighting, and this lighting company. And I probably should have shut down the lighting company because we've lost money for many years. But the team, it's this youthful, high energy team that's so innovative. And we're learning a lot. Actually, now we're doing things in the area of IoT. Our latest products are all smart. We're writing the software, and now the software we're creating is software that our customers will be able to use to develop their own smart products. But we actually really deeply understand what's involved in updating the firmware across all these light tubes and lighting devices. And we've learned actually retail, because we sell through all whatever 2,000 something Home Depot stores for the last 6 years, and marketing on the consumer side, and all of that layers into us as a culture.
Hmm.
And
So it
the
isn't just
lean
yeah, I mean, it's the inspiration is in the details and in the depth of knowledge and in understanding. I mean, it's once you get what's really happening in the most basic level, that helps you, I guess, really see the way that the universe is heading. It's like understanding the underlying laws of physics that are leading you toward a particular direction, and understanding, I would imagine, your customers too.
I think we do really. I think we're one of the best engineering companies in the world. Actually, the team on the consulting side is extremely strong, and we design a lot of products for a lot of really well-known companies. And usually, a lot of those best projects that we've done, we can't talk about, which is really frustrating. But but many of the more recent ones, are mixes of motion dynamics and structures and controls and electronics. I mean, they're really these unbelievably sophisticated things.
I'm
That,
so glad that we had this chance to talk about Altair's history and your growth and evolution with the company. I think this is really exciting stuff, and I hope everyone here who's been watching has enjoyed this conversation, and that you'll uh, keep coming and stay tuned for more.
Thank you very much, Bert.